Welcome to Talks with Dr. Gupta and friends. Today we examine the structural mechanics of power. We compare asymmetric geopolitical conflicts with domestic youth revolutions, specifically how centralized power structures use volatile, non binding promises to pacify resistance. Whether analyzing international defense struggles or domestic street mobilization, the core power dynamic remains identical. A less resourced actor confronts an established, highly centralized machinery. Look at the global theater. The confrontation between Iran's defense apparatus and the combined military and intelligence might of the United States and Israel offers a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. A central driver of this instability is the transactional, unpredictable nature of superpower diplomacy. This is exemplified by Donald Trump's foreign policy, where stances flip overnight between grand peace deals and existential threats. To understand this dynamic, look at three examples where Washington promised diplomacy but executed abrupt reversals. First example, the JCPOA and Iran negotiations. Washington originally promised diplomatic normalization under the nuclear framework, then unilaterally tore up the deal. It then enforced maximum pressure sanctions and pivoted to targeted assassinations and military escalation. Second example, trade and tariff guarantees. Washington promised economic stability and free trade partnerships, then abruptly slapped unilateral tariffs. Third example, transactional peace truces. Grand multi-point peace accords are unveiled claiming immediate resolution, then enforcement is abandoned when priorities shift. Local populations are left stranded in renewed conflict. Now compare this with domestic governance in India. The ruling BJP machinery employs an almost identical playbook of tactical pacification against youth protests. Protests focus on paper leaks, exam cancellations, and widespread unemployment. Look at three parallel examples where state promises to Indian students and youth were made under pressure, then diluted or reversed. First, the 2 crore jobs per year guarantee. The promise of 20 million jobs annually devolved into net zero, white-collar growth, and frozen recruitment boards. Widespread contractualization eroded job security. Second, leak-free competitive exams and fast-track courts were promised after massive paper leak scandals. Leadership promised instant fast-track courts, anti-paper leak legislation, and absolute accountability. Key ministerial resignations were stonewalled, enforcement was delayed, and students waited for structural reform. Third, the Agnivia Defense Recruitment Scheme was pitched as transformative youth empowerment. It promised corporate quotas and post-service absorption, but left lakhs of rural youth stranded after short-term service. They returned without pensions, permanent status, or guaranteed employment safety nets. Welcome back to part 2 of Talks with Dr. Gupta and friends. Now let's analyze the cross-learning between these two arenas and outline 5 concrete takeaways for the Gen Z movement. The core insight is simple. Whether dealing with superpower diplomacy or domestic party machinery, centralized regimes use verbal assurances, fast-track announcements, and temporary committees as tactical smokescreens. Their objective is not to solve the underlying grievance, but to stall momentum, drain protester energy, and wait for public attention to shift. Iran survived decades of maximum pressure not by trusting verbal deal-making, but by building decentralized operational resilience, maintaining strategic patience, and consistently raising the political and economic cost of conflict for its adversaries. For India's Gen Z and student movements, here are the 5 vital strategic takeaways drawn from this asymmetric reality. First, decentralized leadership to prevent pacification. Just as asymmetric defense networks survive the targeting of top commanders through operational autonomy, youth movements must avoid relying on single central figures. Second, reject verbal assurances and demand enforceable statutes. Treat speeches, tweet announcements, and promises of fast-track committees as meaningless until backed by gazetted, legally binding statutes with independent judicial oversight. Third, raise the political cost of inaction. Ruling administrations yield only when sustained. Organized civic pressure directly threatens their performance at the polling booth. Fourth, anchor all advocacy in unshakable empirical data. When state propaganda shifts, movements must lock their focus on verifiable numbers like published recruitment figures and independent audit reports. Fifth, build institutional infrastructure beyond crisis cycles. Transition from sporadic post-exam protests into permanent campus and district-level civic networks that monitor governance and track local spending. Power never concedes voluntarily to outrage. It yields only to structured, sustained, and empirically grounded organization. By rejecting superficial promises, demanding enforceable legal guarantees, and maintaining focus on measurable outcomes, India's youth can convert temporary protest into lasting structural change. Thanks for watching Talks with Dr. Gupta and friends. Stay sharp, stay informed, and let's keep analyzing the forces shaping our world.